It's great to have you at the Horace's forum here in Belfast, and you've been always, FICCI's been supporting for a long time. My question to you is that what is FICCI doing for the SME sector?
Yeah.
And that's something which people are, or even the micro entrepreneurs, is something being done there, or is it all concentration on the bigger sectors?
FICCI has a very large constituency in what we call the MSME and SME sectors. We address it on two fronts. One is what are the issues that the SME itself requires resolution on, and it can be everything to do with labor laws or where they operate through power shortages or permissions. And it varies, of course, from state to state because the challenges are different. But FICCI, through its national agenda, drives a lot of this SME messaging back into the ministry. The other role, of course, of the SME is through big industry, because big industry relies very largely on the SME sectors for its provision of whether it's ancillary businesses, services, supplies. And therefore, the health of the SME sector is critical for big business as well. And therefore, there is a whole chain of thinking around that supply chain, that how and what is required of the SME to deliver into the large industry and supply chain therein. And supply chain is not just about big Indian industry. Supply chain is about being part of global supply chains as well. So addressing that becomes very important. And in order to do that, it also requires the highest standards of governance, because you can't belong in, particularly in a global supply chain, unless you adhere to the best standards. And you have seen how in Bangladesh now suddenly that is in focus.
Yes.
You have seen how if labor laws are breached, whether it's Human Rights Watch or other groups, they will ensure that that particular industry or company has an issue that will need resolution. So to raise the bar in terms of performance, to ensure that there's compliance at a global level, is also a role that FICCI plays.
Okay, thank you. What I also want to know was that how do you hear the voice of the SME? Because sometimes you would feel that they operate in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, and their language is a problem there, and possibly the regional languages. Sometimes you don't see them represented on the FICCI's delegation or decision-making bodies. So how does their voice get heard? Who speaks on their behalf, really speaking, or the big industry actually hijacks their agenda and says, I'm saying on their behalf. So I want to be sure that the actual voice is being heard from the grassroots level.
Yeah, well, the way FICCI is constituted is we're an apex chamber, and our membership is made up of other chambers of commerce, which includes chambers which come from the states and chambers which therefore represent the SME. So it's a voice that has a big, loud voice right up to our National Executive Committee level. And so it certainly gets heard and deliberated on. And because of the nature of collaboration of large industry and small, it's a voice that cannot get ignored, because for every company that is big, one of its suppliers is an SME. So you would inevitably have that voice coming, whether it's through large industry or through the formal representation that FICCI has. It's a bit unusual to have SMEs represented in a business delegation which comes with the minister. However, we do special delegations for SMEs, which are also led by the minister or indeed by President FICCI. So we have indeed taken these SME delegations, and then they're very specific. It will be, for example, just around textile machinery, or it will be specifically around a particular sector which has its issues or is attempting to build a bridge, say with a Cambridge Technology Center or so on.
Okay. Another area we'd like to talk about is incubation of entrepreneurs. You say that they are the lifeblood of Indian economy. Is there a special program where you focus on incubating these entrepreneurs, and at what stage and what level do you pick them up and then train them?
See, entrepreneurship exists at different levels. So the IT sector does its work through NASSCOM and TIE, but they in turn are members of FICCI. So we work with them through some of these programs. So it is a little sector specific. However, we are doing programs of very varied natures. To give you an example, most recently, FICCI along with USAID, and we've jointly contributed to this program, have a program on social entrepreneurship, where we have invited applications. We got over 1,500 applications. We've picked from those projects which we believe deserve a push, and in picking those, now those are the projects which will get funded to move ahead. So we work in many ways, not just in terms of entrepreneurship as in a traditional industry sense, but also social entrepreneurship, working with an international group like USAID.
Okay.
We're hoping to develop similar programs with other countries to help in the social entrepreneurship field. And some of these ideas are brilliant. They are simple solutions that are required at a very elementary level, typically in a small town, with a view to, could be poverty alleviation, it could be delivery of an e-health example,
Okay.
but things that can really help in terms of improving the lot of a common man.
Okay. I also noticed that one of the charters of FICCI is helping in influencing policy formulation of the government.
Yeah.
What has been your success rate, or what do you feel has been in the Indian context? Are you making any headway? Have you seen any change taking place in the last few years? Government is more responsive, listening
Yeah.
more, or is it just very frustrating, or is it okay?
Well, look, it depends on which industry again, because each industry has a different level of engagement with government. So, for example, one of the things that we have been pushing for very hard is medical devices. Today, no hospital, no doctor can work without electronic devices, which are very critical to an operation or even a stent, etc. But the rules that India applied were to do with the pharma sector,
Okay.
whereas we needed to evolve a separate set of policies for medical devices. And I read that finally, yesterday, that has come through. It's been a 5-year battle. It's been a process of education, understanding, accept global standards for medical devices. Everything in India doesn't need another reaffirmation if it is a global standard for delivery. And it is these sort of things which become very important, where industry comes together. And believe me, coming together is not easy in
Not
industry,
easy.
because
Exactly.
you've had many disparate voices. So what is that common stand? If there's disagreement, then that needs to be understood, so that you're not being used by a particular group or a particular faction.
Yeah.
And then taking that forward as the policy, which is an informed policy, because there will always be a paper on it. It will be, therefore, a well-informed paper which gets put forward to government, questions from there getting addressed, maybe seminars in order to ensure that industry itself moves up the curve. And then as a result of it, if you can get significant legislative change or recognition, then it becomes a very important aspect of that policy. So these are different dialogues and discussions at different levels, sometimes small, sometimes very big. There are cases we work very closely with government, and we have a big initiative called Cascade right now,
Okay.
Which is to do with counterfeit goods, where government is actually funding and supporting FICCI's initiatives to ensure that there's awareness coming up from the consumer.
Okay.
Because our belief is, if the consumer understands the effect of counterfeited goods or buying counterfeited goods,
Yes.
then we will ensure that people don't buy those goods.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And counterfeiting is there, whether it's pharma or food,
Everywhere.
and really dangerous, in fact. So we did the study to show the scale of how counterfeiting exists. So that really scared everyone. We go right down to the school and college levels, where kids are, in debates and discussions on why they shouldn't download films for free if they're illegally being made available to them, and what are the implications of that.
Okay.
So it's awareness building, it's ensuring that the legislation is one that also ensures that those that are in the wrong get punished appropriately. So there's a lot of working together with government, working with consumers, and ensuring that the best standards therefore get arrived at. And not all of it, unfortunately, happens as easily as it should. With the magic wand, sometimes it's frustrating. You asked, yes, there are frustrations, but I think that also a lot of good comes of it as well.
Yeah, I was saying that it's very fashionable to talk about clean technology, sustainable growth, talk about renewables and all. Yeah. What was that really? Is there something tangible happening, or it's illusory, or it's too slow? It sometimes looks like it's such a small drop in the ocean. Yeah. What is FICCI doing to get involved in this very crucial part of it? With you?
Well, it's a very large area, right? I think India today has seen reasonable success in the wind space, where today we are one of the largest producers of wind energy. And the challenge for us is not so much the production of wind energy now, but as to how to wheel it through a grid. Because the surges of power that happen, and they happen at night, don't help in terms of the way the grid can absorb it. So clearly what we are needing more of is smart grids. and just looking at the way the grid is able to suck this power in and wheel it through the system. Solar, the issues are different, as you well know. It's all to do with price and price of delivery. And the good news right now is that the technology of solar and the way the cost of film and batteries have come down have made it a lot more affordable. And India, which is horribly power short, and today is looking at maybe increasing the price of gas into the system from a sort of 450 mark to a recommended 6 plus, which is necessary to bring gas out of the ground, makes the price of gas and solar much closer. So if you haven't got hydrocarbon, and that too at a subsidized level, which is lower because it's subsidized, and you've got the alternatives up at these prices, suddenly solar becomes very affordable. And then the ability to do solar in a distributed manner, because solar through the grid versus solar into villages where the grid doesn't exist. And we were just discussing how maybe you take that solar lantern into a village which does not have a grid. And the only solution is distributed power through a solar lantern or solar cook stoves and such like. And those will provide, I'll call them temporary solutions. They could be solutions for the next 5 or 10 years till electricity is brought in to the grid. But those are very critical 5 to 10 years for that village or that place that has no power and is not on the map at all. And we have all seen how just one solar lantern in a family can change a life. It allowed the entire family to stay awake later, kids to study, and the certainty of having that power, particularly in many parts of North India where, you know, in the winter you would get dark by 5 o'clock.
Absolutely.
So those are very productive hours for families and people. So I do believe that we are seeing this change. The government now, through its National Solar Mission, is looking and has in fact announced policies and incentives around this. Will renewables ever replace hydrocarbons in an Indian context? They can't. But do they fill a very important gap? Absolutely. And if we can build our renewable space into the gap that we are facing right now through the whole hydrocarbons delivery of power, then it plays a very, very critical role and has the good fortune of also being clean.
Absolutely.
And therefore brings clean tech to India.
So that brings me to the point, does FICCI have a vertical which is looking at clean tech and renewables totally, and is it really focused on that? Because
absolutely.
Yes, and tell me something about that, because you know a lot of people need a lot of training in that, because at the moment what has happened was that my experience has been in solar. I've been to Bihar, lots of places that a lot of people lost faith in solar because in the initial days we went in for very poor quality of solar products. So there was a drop in faith.
Now you're talking of retail products.
Yes. And then over a period of time now, certain good products are coming to the market and there is a little confidence building up. So there's a need for certain kind of things to come up where industry bodies to support it, so the solar goes and solar mission becomes something tangible. So is there a vertical?
We have to discuss this again at two different levels. One is solar as industry sees it, which is solar delivery through larger solar plants, which then deliver to the grid
and off-grid,
or off-grid to the extent that it's captive power. Versus what I think you're saying, which is to do with distributed solar, which is retail products. And I think there it again is an SME's answer. But what we have seen is bodies like IFC and others who have engaged to ensure that the technology that goes in, so if it's a cook stove, it should be one that the consumer can absorb, but even more that product can be serviced in the event that it goes down or isn't working properly. And that has to do really more with the product and its supply. So the role that FICCI plays in that end is really, very minor, because it has to do with the delivery of the product and must conform to some product
standards
standards which need to be delivered. But the role we play in terms of overall policy to ensure that is where the solar system works, how does the regulator work, how does the solar sector develop private equity within it, etc. Those are the spaces which FICCI absolutely can and does engage in. And then separately, FICCI has actually worked and adopted some of the villages with TERI in terms of delivering solar lanterns. But there the work is more financial and engagement therein to make sure that the audits happen
Okay.
and that the work is actually going on as promised.
Okay.
But we work through NGOs
Okay.
Who are in fact working
A lot of
in these
NGOs, yeah,
spaces
a lot of
because they know how to deliver
Yes.
and what to deliver.
Yes.
And FICCI's hand there is really more to aid and help those NGOs deliver it properly.
Okay, that's very encouraging because that's the future, I think, taking place in some of the rural areas where, like I said, 5 to 10 years, there's a big gap building up, which you need to fill up
Yeah.
by the time the grid comes. And some places I've been to where the grid is unlikely to come because it is unproductive for the grid to go there.
Yeah.
Standalone grids may possibly be the answer.
Yeah.
And with that comes to me one more question, that in some past we were seeing a lot of dumping taking place from China of solar products coming to India,
Yeah.
especially in terms of PV areas.
Yeah.
And that's a place where I thought FICCI could have intervened and, pushed the government to pass regulation, which they did later on, so that we don't get dumped with the products which are,
But you look at that debate now. At one end, of course,
prices are, of course.
Yeah. So, which side of the debate are we on?
Yeah, it's good
Bringing the
price
price of
down
solar down,
or-
protecting industry to a point where solar doesn't take off? And
Absolutely.
I think these are the areas where you've got these contentious issues.
And
What is
discuss
it that a FICCI begins to play a role?
Absolutely. I
Because
understand.
the answers are not simple. You want cheaper solar on the one hand, and on the other,
Then
you want the right quality and you want your own
It's-
indigenous
yeah.
industry to grow.
Quite
But
dichotomous.
what is that? And I think that is the dialogue
Yeah.
that FICCI provides with government to raise the issues so that the decision that's taken is taken, yes, in the interest of the consumer who wants cheaper solar, but
Right.
also in the interest of industry in the long run so that you can have a healthy sector. And sometimes it has to do with timing, other times it is a solution which is therefore cobbled together in order to provide these answers.
Thank
but
you.
the answers are never easy.
Thank you very much. I'm so delighted that FICCI is so much involved in clean technology and renewables. Very great to hear that.
We would ignore it at great cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very
Right,
much.
thank you.